The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining for our presentation today. I'm really excited. This is the first time that we're doing this particular format. This session today, this is the Build It Now with Infowise. So this is going to be a live session where we're going to actually build out a solution, basically see how far we can get within our time frame. I'm not sure exactly how long we're going to go, but I am recording the presentation, and we may go as long as 2 hours. The goal today is to build a timesheet solution using Infowise, and I've got a site up, and we're going to do this from scratch. My hope is basically in doing this, you can pick up some ideas in terms of not just building a timesheet solution specifically, but some general techniques and approaches that you can use when building solutions out with Infowise. So I'm just logged into my own SharePoint Online tenant. All these concepts and principles that we'll see when we're building, this applies whether you're using on-premise SharePoint or SharePoint Online. So before I delve into all that, just to give you quick intros, again, my name's Will Cooper. I'm the Infowise training coordinator, and I also do a lot of consulting and SharePoint development, working with various SharePoint customers. And I've been working with SharePoint pretty heavily for several years. That's kind of my focus area. In terms of ground rules for our session today, if you notice in the GoToWebinar client, you have options for questions and chat. I do have at least one or two colleagues joining me today. They're going to help out with that. If we don't happen to get your comment right away, please be patient. There's a lot of content that I'm trying to get through as I'm building out the solution. But do please put your comments there. In particular, I encourage you to use the chat interface for the session today. And if you guys can kind of participate there, you may be able to even kind of answer some of your own questions if that helps. So what you're seeing on my screen right now is just a blank team site. I've done nothing, and that's really kind of the concept of what we're doing today. We really want to kind of build from scratch. So I made a blank team site here in my SharePoint Online tenant, and this is what all of us see when we first create a site. I did do one other thing. If I go into site contents, I'll show you in SharePoint Online. I do need to add the Infowise Ultimate Forms app. Of course, you do that with each site. It is very much my habit when I'm building tools like this to just create a sub-site specifically for that tool. I found that pattern works pretty well. Technically, I could have this inside of the site with other things, but I just generally like this approach. You're going to see me kind of toggling back and forth. I have already an existing solution that I'm using for reference in this just to help me kind of remember some things. But we'll go ahead and get started since we got a lot of ground to cover. So one thing I'm going to comment, I'm going to kind of talk as I'm going through some of these. The process that you go through when you're building solutions, it's really, kind of the same sequence, if you will. So it's good to kind of remember that and build those habits as you're building out solutions. So before I ever get into anything with Infowise settings, I've got to get my lists and fields set up. So that's where we're going to start today. So I already have kind of a plan, if you will, in terms of what I want to build my timesheet solution. There are many different requirements between businesses as far as what you may need, and there's a lot of flexibility, and I hope that you'll see that. So what we're doing is really laying a foundation, so you could kind of take this in any direction you want based on what you're seeing that I'm doing. So I'm going to do two lists for this solution. That's all that we'll need. So we're going to have a timesheets list, and we're going to have a time entries list. And so there's a many-to-one relationship. You're going to make time entries in your timesheet. So I need to go ahead and create those lists first. I do want to use the custom list template. So I'll start by making timesheets. I'm not doing anything special at this point. These are just SharePoint tasks, and then I'll make the time entries list. These are the only two lists that we're going to need. All right, so here's time entries. Okay, naturally there's going to be a relationship between those two lists. So I'm going to get to that in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is get my fields straight in my timesheets list. Don't need a lot of fields, so I'll talk to you about what I'm putting in there. If you wanted to add to these, you certainly can. So the title field, we could either not use it or rename it. I usually like to rename it, and I like to use the Infowise ID for those. So I'm going to have it name something more meaningful. I'm going to name this field TS ID, as in timesheet ID, and we're going to use Infowise settings to set an ID for that. So just renaming the title field, and then I'm going to create some other fields. All right, so the model for my timesheet system is around the concept of a consulting firm where we've got customers and we need to bill to various customers and that type of thing. But you can sort of add and remove from what I'm doing depending on what you're building. So I'm going to put in consultant as opposed to employee. So this is just a SharePoint people picker field. I'm not doing anything special. This is going to be required. And we'll have that on the time entry form as well. We want to track who this is tied to. Then we're going to we need our start and our end, right? So usually we think of a week start maybe on either Sunday or Monday. I'm going to set this up on the concept of a week start with the calendar week, which is Sunday. So I'm going to kind of label my field with that as a reminder. So I'm going to do a date field. I don't need the time in there. So it's date only. Yes, it'll be required. We always need to have that. And obviously I'm going to have end. Like that too. So really just setting up fields to hold our data at this point. I'm going to get the automation going as we get further into this building process. I'm basically just setting up the list to store this data so far. Okay, so end is going to be on a Saturday since we're starting on Sunday. So this is date time. And of course it's required, date only. So, just the same kind of thing as the last one. I am going to set up an ability to submit these timesheets using a SharePoint checkbox. You'll see how I'm going to do that with Infowise a little bit later, but I need a checkbox in there. So I'm just going to have a field called submit, and I'm going to make that a yes, no. By default, it's going to be no. Don't need to see that in the view, so I'm going to uncheck that column. Okay, so there's submit. For tracking purposes, when these do get submitted, we want to have a submitted date. We want to know when these are submitted by our consultants or employees. So I'll have a date time for that. Again, we're going to have automation tied to it. Right now, we're just creating fields to store this information. Not required because initially we don't have that. So this one can be date and time. And yeah, we'll let it be in the default view, at least for now. Okay, so there's submitted date. Submitted. We'll just make that's going to be yes, no, just to track whether this was submitted or not. Actually, this is going to be based on submitted date. If we got a submitted date, it means it's submitted. So I'm going to do a calculated field for this one. So I want just a true false value for this. So I'm going to do calculated. again, we haven't touched Infowise yet. We're just laying the, setting the table, if you will. We have to get all this done first. There's really no way around it. Okay, so for this one, kind of have a formula I've already worked up for this. So basically, if we have a submitted date, then it's true, has been submitted, otherwise it's false. Okay, so that should return true or false. So it's calculated returning yes or no, and I'm not going to show that in the view for the moment. We need this for some of the other things that we're doing later. One other one we'll do status. Status is one I do probably just about in every kind of solution that I build, because whether it's an approval process or a timesheet or help desk tickets, whatever the case may be, there's some kind of business process where you're going through various stages or steps, and so the status field is important to us because we can check that and use that as the condition in terms of how the form looks or various actions that might take place. So this is a field that's important in just about any kind of solution that you build. In this case, we really don't need much. We're just going to have a default status, which is going to be in progress. That's its default state, and then once it gets submitted, it will be submitted. Okay, so that's all I need. We're going to do color choice for this later. Right now, I'm just setting up this first, then we'll layer that on top. So in progress is default. It will be in the default view. I think that's the last field we actually even need for timesheets. So like I say, we're not trying to build anything real complicated here. We're just trying to get kind of a core solution. Okay, so that should pretty much be the fields we need for timesheets. We may circle back and add something a little bit later in our build process. Next thing we're going to do is time entries. Okay, so we're going to do associated items. So this is a really important concept and process in just about all of your Infowise related solutions. We do have a really good tutorial on the Infowise site. If this is something you wrestle with or you haven't done it before, it's definitely a skill that you want to have in your toolbox. It's not too hard, but not very intuitive either. But once you've done it once or twice, it's not a big deal. So one thing that's important is I need to make sure I do this first before I add any fields or do anything. If you don't do this in order, then you're going to have problems. So the first thing I got to do to set up associated items is I need to allow for management of content types. If I don't turn that on, I can't do my next step. Okay, so you guys can see how I did that. I'm on the settings screen for that list. I turned on that option, and once I've done that, it lets me come down here to content types. So I need to do that because I need to make a switch. I need to get rid of the default content type, the SharePoint item content type, and we're going to replace it. We're going to add an Infowise content type. Usually in SharePoint development, I don't mess around with content types hardly at all. It's a bit confusing, and in my experience, typically not necessary, but this is a situation where it is necessary. The thing that's good is it's these exact same steps anytime that you need to do this. So like I say, after you've done it a couple of times, it's really not a big deal. So you can see I've made a switch. This used to be item content type. Now it's Infowise associated item. So this is what lets us set up the associated item field in the parent list, which is the timesheets. Now I can go ahead and modify and create fields however I need to do that. Okay. Let's see, I don't think we're going to use title in our list. I'm just going to make that not required and kind of ignore that field. Just like in the parent list, we do want to keep track of who the person is who made the time entry. I'm going to put consultant again, and we'll make sure that this is going to be tracked to whoever made that time entry. So that's another people picker. It's required. And that can be default. No, yeah, I guess we'll put it in there for now. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do a choice field now. I mentioned the model for my example is, like a consulting firm. So we have various customers. So, you know, if you imagine consultants, they have to track and bill their time according to who they're doing work for. So that's the purpose of this field. So I'm going to do a choice field, and we'll just kind of come up with some dummy customers here. So, you could do a lookup list or something like that. It just depends how many customers you have. For our demo today, we're just going to kind of have some, come up with some silly ones here. All right, Apple's company. I always do this. It's a habit. I do fruit or food or something like that. Bananas Inc. Whoops, I don't need a comma. Okay, Cherries Corp. And Donut Industries. Okay. Okay, so it's going to be a drop-down menu. It is required. And I don't want a default. It's required, but I don't want a default. Okay, so it's good. We got our customer. Okay, we'll also do a category. You have to, in time tracking systems, account for PTO, sick days, things like that. So probably be good to have a category for that. Could name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it category. This is going to be another choice field, and we're going to do, I'll just put work. First of all, PTO. I'll just put those for now. Okay, so defaults work. That can be in default view. That's fine. Okay, so that's another choice column. What else do we need? We want to do description of the work, right? They need to say what they were doing, and then the hours. Okay, so I think those are the last two we need. So description, we don't want this to get super long, so we're not going to use a multi-line text. A single line text should be fine. That's 255 characters. It is required. So part of the way this system's going to work, we want to be able to do reporting on hours. We want to provide that out to customers, and this is the way that we're going to be able to do that. So that one's important and required, and that's good for that one. Okay, and then the next one we're going to do is hours. Okay, so that's the number field, and we're going to say, we'll say we'll do one decimal place. So we're going to say that we don't want them to do more than that, and we'll make a note about that. Okay, so we'll say, please enter hours in half-hour increments. All right, that's going to be our plan. You can make this work however you want. That'll be in default view. Certainly that's going to be required, right? Okay, so that's kind of all our fields. So this part of the process is not super exciting. If any of you guys have done my Kickstart training, I kind of mentioned that, but it's important. We really can't do anything else until we've defined these tables. If you think of this like an Access database or SQL Server tables, we need a place to store all this data before we can go about creating any other settings, that type of things. Okay, now that we've set the table, now we can start getting into the Infowise stuff, the things that are probably a bit more interesting to look at. So now that I've got those two lists there, I'm going to go back into the timesheets, and we'll start applying some Infowise settings. Okay, so I'm going to the good old puzzle pieces icon so I can get into those settings. Okay. I don't know if you guys have noticed, you can toggle between novice and expert, so that's kind of cool. You don't have to read those long descriptions if you don't want to. So let's do the associated items field first, because that's really important, right? So we're going to create a field called time entries, and that's going to show in the parent record in the timesheet. So we just name it time entries. I don't really need a description. Yeah, we'll say it's required. Okay. Well, they're going to need to do that before submit anyway. Okay. So one thing that's cool, the configuration menu automatically picks up on that. So in this particular site, the only list that has that content type we set up is time entry. So basically everything's set for me already. I don't have to do anything on the screen other than just define the field and click create, and that's it. I'm done as soon as I've done that. We may tweak settings later. You can do things like there's a grid mode. You can try that. So a lot of times, after you kind of create your main system, you're going to tweak it. You're going to, try different variations on those settings to see what they look like. Okay, so that's good. We have our associated items field. That one's important. Okay, so we're going to also need to track the total hours, right? So they're entering all these time entries, and we need to roll that up into how many hours they work for the week. So we have this closely related field for that. So associated item summary basically just runs the calculation for you across those items so you can get that total. So we need that. We need total hours. And it just asks you which list it's looking at. So it's the time entries list, and lo and behold, there's hours. And what we need is not count, that'd be the number of entries. We want the sum. That'll give us that roll up total. That's it. That's all we're going to do for that. Just click create, and it'll make a field to store that information for me. I get a green confirm dialog when that's set. Okay. So that's total hours. Okay, now we want to do those color choice. So color choice, that's probably one of the most common things you do in Infowise. I pretty much use this for any choice columns just because why not? It just makes things look better. So status. Okay, we got in progress submitted. I pretty much always use icons. You can use what you want, but I use these so much, and you can have many icons on a list record, whereas that doesn't work very well, in my opinion, with the colors. So I do favor using icons. So let's see, we'll do in progress. I'll do that one. I'll do green arrow, and then submitted. We'll do check mark, same color. I don't like that. I gotta change this. Okay. All right, there's status. Okay, so there's our color choice field for that. All right, what else do we want to do? Let's do indicator. So what I want is like a progress bar. I want to see, according to those total hours, I want to see a bar filling up. A typical work week, maybe that'd be 40 hours. So my bar will be kind of based on that, right? So here's the indicator. We've got three types. The one we're going to do is going to be a progress bar, and call it utilization. All right, there we go. Okay, so what type? It's asking me, well, I want to do the progress bar, and then it wants to know what am I looking at? It needs to know the value. So total hours. That's the associated item summary that I just set up. And then it needs to know like a start and end value. A lot of times these are 0 to 100. In this case, that you wouldn't want to do that. We're thinking about a 40-hour work week. So we would say that if you get up to 40 hours, it's sort of 100% utilization, right? You're billing the whole time. And then this is kind of new. We have options to change the color of the bar depending on how full it is. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to say that it changes color according to that. So we'll say blue for 0 to 30%. These are based on percentages. See the little percent sign? So it's going to do the math for us. I don't have to think about anything crazy. So it'll take a percentage of the goal value. Okay, and then we'll do green if we're, let's say, 31 to 70. And then do orange if you're 71 to 100. Well, no, 70. Yeah, I guess that'd be good. 71. We'll say to 71 to 99. I get too caught up on these things sometimes. You want to get everything right, but it's really easy to adjust this stuff later, so it's really not necessary. It's better to just kind of put in some settings and then circle back and adjust it later. So we could have, like 150%. So if you're wondering why I'm having over 100%, that's the reason why. Okay, so now we've got a bar that would actually change color, so that's cool. Okay, we need to have an item ID. If you remember way back at the start when I created the list, I changed the title field. So I want to get Infowise to take care of that for me. So item ID, let me find it. It's up here. Super easy to set this up. You basically just say, okay, ask which field. In this case, it's the TS ID is what I called it, and we just give it a pattern, and Infowise takes care of the refs. Set it, forget it. All right, there we go. All right, so there it is, TS ID. Now, typically you do want it to just happen on new item. It basically try to re-trigger this event on an edit if you have that check. So you don't want that. Prevent manual editing. Just trying to help you. I mean, that means you don't want the user to override that for any reason. So the key part about these is you have this numerator function. It's this hashtag you see in square brackets. Basically, you put together some pattern with that. Now, you can do something kind of interesting. You can give it an argument and seed it at a certain value if you want. It's just according to your preferences. If I do this, it'll start at 1, but I can seed it at, say, 1,000. You might be asked, well, why do you want to do that, or what's the reason? It's arbitrary. It's whatever the preference is, whatever the convention is in your organization. Doesn't really matter. Just letting you know that's an option. There's other stuff you could put in there too. I mean, you can see there's all these Infowise functions for dates, and there's all kinds of things I could do with it, but typically that isn't necessary. We're just giving it a user-friendly, unique identifier. I've built a lot of different systems, and to me, I've not really run into situations where people need to do anything special. Usually simple is fast with these. So I just make that and click add, and that'll show up on the top there. I'm guessing most of you guys probably use this functionality. So there's our ID generator. Infowise is going to take care of that for us. Okay, so that kind of takes care of our Infowise field configuration settings. So we got to lay out our tabs, right? So that's what we'll get into next. Right? Okay, I'm going to go into tab settings. Okay, so tabs are a really important part of building things with Infowise. So even in this case, I really don't have a lot of fields, and you might draw the conclusion, well, I don't need tabs because I just have 7 or 8 fields. I don't need that. But there's a lot of things in the tab configuration that have to do with styles and the way the form's laid out, and you can have a custom title, and all of that functionality is related to this tab configuration. So just trust me when I tell you, even if you only have one section, it's a good building practice to always create a tab, even if you just have a small handful of fields. Okay, so I'll just call it timesheet. That works. Okay, so just click add. I don't need to do multi-column or anything like that. We've got pretty straightforward setup. Okay, so I'm sure you guys are familiar with this part. I'm just adding my info in. I am going to do something kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys know about this functionality yet, but the fragments, it lets you put in, kind of special note for the user, maybe some additional instruction. The thing that's new that I like is you can actually control whether a fragment appears in certain forms. So it's more dynamic than it used to be. Rather than just something that's statically there in the form, no matter what, I can control that. So I'm going to do, so I'm going to say like new form note. And I'm going to put placeholder text for here because, like I said, you can circle back to things. You don't want to get too bogged down trying to get everything perfect. So I'm going to say, please create timesheet first, then save, then add time entries, something like that. You may be wondering why I'm putting that, but it's really just kind of placeholder for now. So I can go up to font size. That's too tiny. I don't want my text to be like that. Oh no, I didn't get it all. Okay. All right, 14. It doesn't have to be black. We can kind of dress things up a little bit. So I'll give it a little highlight. Okay, and this is my note. I just want this to show on the new form only. So I'm going to, all right, let's say spans full row. Let's do centering. And then, so by default, it's all, which means it shows up no matter what. But in this case, I'm just going to do new. So, okay, I just created the fragment. I didn't put it on the form yet, but I'm setting this up. Okay, so if I'm doing that, I'm sure you know the next thing I'm going to do. I'll make one called edit form note. So what's cool is the note at the top of the page is going to be different depending on whether you're on the new and edit form. So I can kind of give context sensitive directions. So that's pretty neat. Okay, this one I'm going to use to kind of report some information. So I'm going to say, let's say timesheet last modified by user time. Okay, so see that? I can insert columns, so let's get that information. So what I want is the value in the SharePoint fields for modified, by, and modified, right? I'm just going to have it spit that out into the form for me. So do that, one of those. Oop, where'd you go? Oh, it's acting kind of crazy. Okay, hold on. I'm not sure why it's fighting with me. I know what this is supposed to look like. I might just type it in. Try to go in developer mode and see. No, I don't have any blockers on. Well, let's see if I can just do this. Let's see. Modified by. This is what it looks like when you add into the form. It'll have double square brackets. That's kind of the pattern to it. And modified. All right, let's see. Okay. Well, I don't know why it's fighting with me. Okay. Modified. All right, want it bigger, right? We want it to look kind of user friendly. So we did 14. We'll make this one kind of light green. Okay, centered. So again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this stuff because really I'm initially just focused on functionality. Now we can kind of circle back and do the polish and things like that. We know that's easy. It's easy to adjust this stuff. So we don't want to dwell on that. And this one's just for the edit form, right? So we don't want it to show in the new form. It's not important to us at that point. So there we go. All right, so I got my fragments ready. So we'll have those. Okay, so I click add, and they show up just like the fields do, and then add. Okay, so these don't show at the same time based on the settings I just made. It'll be one or the other. Okay, now we can actually put in the fields, kind of the more conventional part of this process. So, all right, so what I need is, all right, put in the fragment. Okay, we need the consultant, right? We're getting ready to see our form. That's kind of the exciting part. Okay, start and end, right? Got your start date, end date for the timesheet, and then, of course, time entries, right? That's kind of the meat of the form. And then, if you remember, I had a submit button, not submitted, that was storing a value for us. This is going to be a little checkbox that the user will use to submit their timesheet at the end of the week, we hope. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. We don't need the timesheet ID in the form. That'll just be out on the dashboard. I don't think we need that. I'm going to leave it off for now. Utilization, that's an indicator field. That's for the dashboard. It's not for the form, so we don't need that. that's pretty much it for fields for now. We're going to come back into this probably. Um, I'll change the theme because, why not? Um, let's see. What should I do? Um, I don't know. I have a hard time deciding that. Okay, I did glass, and then usually I like to use this title to put a header on the top. I'm going to skip that just for now. We'll do pop-up help. I like that. We are going to do something with styles in a little bit. I'm not going to do that right this second. Right now, we're just trying to get things set up. Okay, so it's barking at me. I missed status. I missed it. Okay, yeah. Okay, fine. I'll add status. I don't think it'll hurt to put the timesheet ID. It'll show as a read only. Um, so yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so those are the fields for the main form. What do we want to do next? Let's see. Just kind of looking through my list. I've kind of got a checklist of things that I know I got to do. All right, I will do the style. Okay, so there's a subform. You're going to see this in a second. I want the associated items table to have a background to it. It's going to make it look nicer. You'll see what I mean in a second. So you can enter CSS styles in here. Some of you guys, this might make you cringe, but it's not that big a deal. It's pretty easy to do. So you got to put in a class. So if you look in the page using the developer toolbar, you can kind of see this. I'll show you in a sec. And I just want to give it a background color, just so it's not white. It doesn't blend in with the page. So I just add that, and then this is a set of style entries. I'm going to click the add button right below that, and boom. Okay, so now you can see I've got that in there, and I'll save. All right, so column permissions, we're going to get into that. Let's see. We want the consultant to be defaulted, right? So let's take care of that. So if I go into default values, we want it to default to the currently logged in user. We're trying to save them some work, right? So there's consultant, and I'm going into my functions, and it's current user. Really simple. Okay, so I just needed to do that in the new form for me, and click add, and now I've got a rule. So when I open the form, it'll automatically show my name there. That's good. That's what we want to happen. Okay, we'll go into column permissions a little bit. So it's almost always the case you should do some column permissions to make the new form show less fields than the edit form, because a lot of the things that you have in your form normally don't apply to the first time the form is created. So you kind of want to adjust based on that. So for example, for the time entries, we want the timesheet to be created first. So I just want the new form to kind of prime the pump, if you will. I just wanted to create the initial timesheet before they actually start entering time. So to control that, what I'm going to do is make a couple rules related to that. I'm going to say, I like to use this. It doesn't really apply to us, but I generally always turn that on. Okay, for time entries, I'm going to say hide on new, and then I need another rule which will make sure that we can see it on that view. So I need write on those. Okay. Okay, it just means it's going to hide this on the new form only. Okay. Okay, so there's some advanced column permissions rules. Hopefully I got that set up right. Probably should go ahead and go into our time entries list and do some things with that right now. That's really most of the initial settings we got to do for the timesheets list. Let's go to time entries. Okay, so I usually prefer just to back out and come to the list and then go back to settings. You don't have to do that technically. There's this drop down the top, and you can control which lists you're doing configuration there. But just I don't know. For me, it just kind of is a little more intuitive. It seems to work better, that kind of thing. Okay, so we're kind of going to go through the same process that we did for timesheets for time entries. So I'm going to go to what do we got to do? We got to do those color choice fields, right? So let's go to customer and category and do those, right? That's easy. It's good to do the easy stuff first. That's not going to break. It's really easy to set up. Okay, so we had some categories. I like icons, so I'll do icons. So we'll just do some different colors. It's kind of arbitrary. Okay, work, PTO, we'll make that orange. You might say, well, why do you need to do that? It just makes the dashboard and list views and things like that look a little bit better. You can always change these around, but it just makes the interface look a little bit more interesting. Otherwise, everything's so white and gray. So it's just good to do this for choice fields, in my opinion. Okay, I got another one, right? We had customers, so all right, we'll use the letters. I like the letters. Okay, so we'll do A, B, C, D. Okay. You can load in your own icons too. I don't know if you guys know that. So you're not necessarily stuck with those. There's a lot of options. There's 250, but we do have a tutorial about that. If you guys wanted to load in your own icon set, you just put them in your site assets directory and just reference the path. We have a whole section about that in our site. So just something to bear in mind. You don't necessarily have to use these. Okay, so there's customer. Okay, so it's updating the SharePoint choice field to include those icons. Okay, so we took care of both of those. I can kind of confirm it by checking my drop-down list. So I can just click close. All right, so that takes care of color choice fields for our time entries list. We got to do our tab layout, right? Okay. Yeah, we want to do defaults too. Okay, so I need to be kind of disciplined here. So on the right side, it kind of reminds you this. See that how to build a form? It's kind of telling you the sequence that I'm going through, and it's good. It's good to build that habit. You don't have to follow this to a T necessarily, but it's kind of good to build those habits. So I want to go to tabs first and set that up. Okay, so again, it's only a few fields, but I want a tab. I want a tab so that I can apply other configuration settings and do other things related to the configuration available with that. So it's a good thing to do. I don't need any fragments for this one. Okay, it's going to be a little bit more basic. Okay, so what do we need? We need our customer. And then we're going to do, ooh, it's acting funny with me again. This is the same thing I ran into with fragments. Wonder why. I may just exit. Oh, no, duh. Okay. My tab. Sorry, guys. All right. So, all right. Here's the customer, and then category. We need the date and the hours, right? So, oh, did I not? I didn't put a field for date. I'm crazy. You have to have a date tied to it. Good gracious. Well, let's put the other stuff in right now. Description. We need the consultant, right? Okay, I'll add date. That's not a big deal. Easy fix. Okay, let's save that for now. We'll be looking at a form very soon. We've done a lot of configuration without looking at the form. That's not, generally I try to say don't do that. So I promise here in a second, we're going to start getting into the form. And that's really more the way that you should work. Okay, how did I not put a date for time entries? I can't believe I missed that one. Okay, That's okay. We'll put it right now. Okay. So this is the date that they did the work, okay? I can just call it date. All right, so it's going to be date time, just date only. Yes, we want to have the default view. For this one, we want it to default to the current date, okay? And it is required. All right, so there's that field. Just missed that one for some reason. Okay, so I'm going back to time entries. I'll go back to the Infowise settings. Go back to tab settings. And wait for this to load. It's thinking about it. Come on. And give it a refresh because I'm not patient. Ooh, I might circle back and do something else while I'm waiting for that to work. Okay. Well, we can do defaults, right? This is like the other one. We want defaults for time entries. Okay, so consultant, remember that one? We want that to be the currently logged in user, right? So that was the current user function. Okay. So I'll go ahead and add that. It's just for the new form. And then save. Gotta give it a second. See that spinner? Just gotta be patient and let it finish what it's doing. SharePoint's being slow at the moment. All right, let's see. Go. I think I'm gonna go back to site, go back into the settings. Not sure what's going on. It decided to take a nap for some reason. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to time entries. And here we go. Oh, it did get it. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that one's in there. All right, let's go back to tabs, tab permissions. Okay, cool. Now we can do what we need to do. All right, so we need date, right? Okay, so the date, and we'll put that right above hours, right? I would say it's time to at least take a look at our form. We've been kind of flying blind, and that's not a good way to develop. One thing I'd like to do, I'm going to open up another tab, and it's good to maybe have one with the form, which you kind of refresh, and then one in the configuration screen. So that's why I got two tabs going. Oh, I'll do another thing too. This is the home page of the site. I want to get rid of this default stuff, and I'm going to have a home page that has the timesheets and stuff like that. So let me clear out this page and get it looking the way I want it to look. I don't like this placeholder stuff. It looks bad. I don't care for these multi-section text layouts. I can't stand them. I just almost always 99.9% of the time just switch to one column. I suppose they did that to try and kind of help people out. Now, I do a bit of HTML and things like that, so I like to have explicit control over things, but nevertheless, I don't like it. I hit Control-A, select all, delete, and make all that stuff get gone. Go away. Well, do this. Goodbye. Okay, now I got a nice clean slate. That's what I wanted. Okay, I've got an image. I cheated. I already got a banner image ready to go. Okay, I'm just going to insert an image from my desktop. Where are you? Clocks. Beautiful, right? All right, so I can load it wherever. That's fine. I can load it to the images directory. Here it goes. Oh boy. Need to be able to, I guess I named it funny. Doesn't matter. There, clocks. Cool. All right, I'll do thin line border. make sure SharePoint didn't put any extra markup. I don't want this extra stuff because I don't want extra spacing at the top. Okay, so just get rid of that. Okay, yeah, just moved it up a little bit. Okay, all I'm doing is trying to get like a homepage dashboard going here. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second, but I just wanted to do that real quick. So this is going to be kind of our user homepage, if you will. So what do we want to see? Timesheets, right? Of course. I want to see if this thing is working. All right, so yeah, we want to make dummy data and dummy records and stuff like that. Okay, cool. There we go. We got an Infowise form. Yay. All right. You'll notice I've got a really wide form. So maybe you don't need it in this solution. There is a part in our website where it explains how you can do this. When you have something you're building that has a lot of fields that could be beneficial to you, otherwise it tends to like scrunch it into kind of a skinny form. So again, that's just kind of preference. Okay, so there's lots of things. Once you start building a form, you kind of look at this and you start coming up with ideas and that kind of thing. Like I don't like submit here. I want that to go below status. So things are going to be bare bones at first until we kind of set things up the way we want. Here, let's make this. It's Sunday to Saturday, right? So that's my start and end date. That's for the timesheet. And in progress, that's going to be default. We're just kind of verifying some things that we set up at the moment. Okay, cool. Timesheet ID 1000. Remember, we seeded it with that. It auto set the consultant to me. That's good. No submitted date yet, right? That's good. We don't have any hours or utilization bar is empty because of it. That's fine. No time entries yet. Let's modify our view a little bit because I don't like things to look sloppy. Let's do what? I want to have an edit button. I like the edit button. I like the edit button because I want users to get into the edit form, right? I have this happen a lot. People open up the record, they get into the view form, and they say things like, I can't edit the form. Well, it's because they're in view mode. So putting the little edit button first is helpful. That helps us to try to guide them towards that. Whoops. Okay, it looks like my my note up here isn't quite right, so that's something we got to fix. All right, so time entry shows an edit form. That's what I wanted it to do, so that's good. So let's make one of those and see if that works okay. All right, there's the time entry form. Yeah, I chose a different style, so that one looks a little different. Obviously, it should be consistent between those two. All right, so I'm going to pick a customer. We'll do it for Bananas Inc. Defaults to work category, that seems good. Defaults to the current date, that's good. Got to enter hours. Okay, so 1.5 hours. Let's see. Optimizing Excel workbooks. That sounds fun. Okay, consultant defaulted to me. That's good. So getting kind of like confirming a lot of settings we're doing. All right, there's the style I was talking about. If I didn't put the style entry, that would just be white. It would be a little bit more boring. So don't get angry with me at any of my style choices. I didn't pick any paint colors in my house, I can promise you. The important factor is you can choose whatever you want there. And it's a lot better to put a little bit of visual flair in your interface than just have, you know, this sea of white, which is what SharePoint tends to be. Let's do another one. All right, let's do Cherries Corp, another work entry. We'll say this one's 5 hours. Project management. Okay. Cool, right? See, I'm getting these inline in the form. Really simple, really easy to use. What does this have? Title? No, don't want to see that. We want an edit button. We need to clean this up a little bit, right? So this is the point in your building process where you have this long laundry list of things. You just start noticing things all over the place that you want to change, which is fine. This is how it works. We just incrementally adjust until we get what we want, right? Okay, so I'm going to save. Okay, cool. Awesome stuff. Look at that. We got total hours working. That was the Infowise associated item summary. That's good. There's our utilization bar. That looks about right. When I hover over it, it says 16.25%, which is good. That is the percentage these hours are from 40. So is somebody's working through the week, that's going to fill up to like 40 hours, right? That's pretty cool. All right, and then I can click on the time entries. That'll accordion out the time entries. So that's nice. I don't even have to open up the form to go into that stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's go to the time entries. We want to fix this. I want to have an edit button on this. I don't want to see the title. We're not using title, so we need to take that off the view. So this is just SharePoint concepts here. This is just modifying the list view. So goodbye title, I don't need to see you, and edit with that edit button. Use that all the time. Let's put that on. First column, there's probably more stuff I want to do. What else we got in the view? Okay, so I don't know, maybe date probably should be first, right? After the edit button. So I'll move that after the edit button. So we'll make date number 2. That makes more sense. Okay, and then the hours are in the end, consultant, customer. Okay, so one thing that's good is, you do have an association between the two lists, but I may need to do printing or reporting or things specifically just on time entries. So, it may seem redundant. We've got the consultant both in the timesheets list and also in the time entries, but we really want to kind of do both because just for tracking purposes, we don't have to worry about losing data. We can do reporting off either one of those, all that kind of stuff. So if I go back to timesheets now, things should look a little bit better for me. Let's take a look and see. Okay, so edit that. Yeah, see how this associated items view updates? It's because it's mapped to that default all items view for time entries. Now you can reconfigure that. I can make a view called like form view if you want to differentiate. But the point is, what you see in the form here is tied to that view. So if you need to make this look better, that's how you're going to do it. All right. So whoops, this is wrong. So I don't like that. I want to fix that. Okay, so we want this to say timesheet last modified by the user in the time. Okay, so I did something bad. Let's see if I can fix it. All right, so I'm going to go and refresh that page. And for now, we can go ahead and add the list view web part. We'll probably have to update it later, but I'll put in the web part. We'll just find timesheets, right? Nothing fancy, just kind of setting things up. We could improve this later. That's the home page for our timesheets site that we're making. Okay, so now I'm going to go to timesheets, and let me see if I can fix that issue that I had. Okay, so I'm going to go back to design. And if you remember, that's in the fragments. So I'm going to go to my fragments and see if I can get it to work. It was kind of fighting me the first time I was in there. So go under tab column association. This is the edit form note. Let's open it up and see. So it doesn't like this syntax. Are you going to work for me? It's not. I don't know why it's not working. I have another reference I can use to put this in. So I'll have to dig into this one. Normally, you guys are not going to have an issue with this, so we'll find out what's going on. It shouldn't be a big deal. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got another system I'm going to look at, and I'm going to look and see what the configuration looks like for that one. Um, edit form note. Oh, I guess this one uses something to editor and modified. Okay. All right. Well, just kind of copy and paste that out of there. Leave there. Let's try that. You know, sometimes this is what it's like. You got to do a little trial and error. Sometimes you got to do a little workaround. Okay, modified by so and so at such and such. All right, let's see if it gets happier about that. Okay, so I just hit OK. That'll update that. I do need to make sure every time, got to hit save at the bottom of those settings. Now, what's cool is, remember I said open 2 tabs because that way I can toggle back and forth, right? I'm going to wait for this to save. It's thinking about it. You'll see the screen refresh once it saves. And then once you apply those settings, you can just do like a control F5 on your form page to confirm your configuration change worked, right? All right, well, I'm waiting for that. There it goes. Here, I just do control F5 on this form. Yes, okay, good. So this just gives us a little metadata, if you will, kind of tells us, if I'm a manager, I'm looking for this. Well, when did this get updated? Will Cooper was in there and updated at such and such time. So just kind of a value add, right? You have all these great Infowise tools and abilities. So, especially the easy stuff, and that was pretty easy. These just create a more polished overall tool and experience. These are things that you can't otherwise do at SharePoint without doing programming. So, it's just kind of part of the recipe. All right, let me look and see if people have questions. I'm going to kind of pause what I'm doing for a second since we're making pretty good progress. Does anybody have, okay, I got somebody who's asked a question about styles. Hold on a second. All right, I'm going to kind of comment on some of the things. I know one of my colleagues is kind of helping to answer questions in chat. There's start and end date. I am actually going to pre-configure the start and end date. We're coming to it. That was from D. That was a good question. I'll show you that. We're going to make our system auto-generate the timesheets. You kind of stole my thunder, D. I was going to really kind of blow you away, but you're right. You're going to see in just 1 second. Leading zeros, that's really a question about SharePoint fields, so I don't know about that one. You're just going to have to play around. That wouldn't be tied to Infowise configuration. That's more of a SharePoint question. Leading zeros and an item ID. I don't know. I normally would not need to. I know what you're talking about. That's a lot of the reason why you concede with like 1,000 value. You're trying to maintain a constant column width. That's why you're wanting to do that. My recommendation would be to seed it at like 1,000 or 10,000, and that way that column will stay at a regular width. Hope that made some sense. Fragment only meant for notes. It's just content. It's just static content in the form. Well, actually, it can contain dynamic content. It's meant for whatever you want it to be used for. I personally think of fragments as a way to help support the idea of in-context help. So when building tools, I'm a really big advocate for putting instructions and directions for your users as close as you can in context to what they're doing. And so you do have those help bubbles, right? And you can load in lots of content there, but this is something additional you can do. So rather than just having a blank form, why not put instructions? Tell them what they're supposed to be doing. I think that's much better than having like a separate web page or some PDF or something somewhere else. I don't think people really look at those. So that's how I think of it. But you can You can use fragments in different ways. I bet you could probably think of ways that I haven't even considered. Um, what is dynamic, apply permission dynamically? All right. That means that you can listen for conditions real time. Okay, so if any of you guys have done Kickstart training, and if you haven't, I hope you will. If you have our product, you can do that training for free. I show how that works. It means that if I change a value in a form and there's a rule tied to it, so let's say I have a rule that says to hide a field if a status is complete. If I change the status, um, it's going to hide that field real time. It'll kind of toggle in and out of view. So as opposed to having to save the form and then reload it to have the rule applied. So you can play with that and try it. But if you look in the Kickstart training, you'll see exactly how that type of functionality works. I usually just turn it on. Associate items accordion to automatically be expanded. Sean, no, that fires an AJAX call to load those. So unless you put some kind of fancy scripting in the page or something like that, I'm not aware of any way that you would do that. You have to do something custom outside Infowise to attempt that. Style sheets for your CSS and tabs. Usually you shouldn't have to use a lot of CSS, James, but you can include as many as you want in the tab settings. There's another way you could do that. If there is actually an import function in there, and yet another way you can use the content editor web part to load in a style sheet. But I only applied one rule, so I've done almost nothing with that. I would recommend if you're thinking about doing custom styling with the form with CSS, kind of wait to do that process last. Typically what I'll do is, this is kind of more programmer oriented, but you can go to, you can go in here and hover over elements, and it kind of helps you discover, what the section of the page is. So how did I know what the name of that table is? Basically, you can kind of drill down into this, and it helps you figure out the names of classes and stuff like that. So some of you might be cringing right now, but I could tell the name of the class of that section by doing this. And we have some advanced training around this if you guys are into this type of stuff. And you can kind of try out a setting ahead of time. So I can do that. See, I can kind of confirm ahead of time before I even do it. Basically, this tells me if for that class I apply that, that's what it's going to look like. So even before I apply the setting. So, sorry, that was kind of a long thing about styles, but it's important if you really want to customize the look of the form. Can you guys hear me all right? I think my sound cut off for a second. Yeah, I am recording this session so you can play it back. So I know it's a long session. So yeah, we're going to post it. We'll load it up on YouTube, that kind of thing. I guess I cut out for a little bit. I don't know why that is exactly. Sorry. Is there any way... I don't know about BCS fields. I think one of our colleagues tried to answer that. Is there a way to bulk enter time? Crew? Yeah, you could do that. You can default create items and associated items. That'd be more like an advanced thing, but yeah. All the things that you do manually, you can automate that, and we can set up actions around that. So I haven't got to actions just yet. Really, I was just kind of pausing the building process to kind of talk about some of the things that were on your mind. So, okay, let me get back into it because I don't want to lose progress on what we're doing. So I appreciate you guys' comments. Really appreciate that. Trying to kind of make this interactive. Okay, so... all right, let's do that thing we were talking about. Let's do auto generate timesheets, right? That'd be useful. That's the concept we want. So let's just say in our consulting firm, we have 5 different employees. they need a timesheet for every week, even if they're going to be on vacation. They shouldn't have to create it themselves. We're trying to take some of that work off of them, right? So let me go into actions, and that's kind of, once you set up your forms and stuff, that's kind of the next thing to look at. And this is, to me, this is some of the most important aspect of what you can do with Infowise, because otherwise I'd have to do this with SharePoint Designer and SharePoint Workflow, and it's just a headache to deal with. I really don't want to go there. Okay, so actions. Okay, normally you're doing this triggered based on events in the form, right? But you have options, and one of them is timer based. So I want a timer based. So we want to auto generate. I'll make it auto generate for me. Auto generate timesheet for Will Cooper on Sunday night. Okay, so when people come in the office, let's say at 11 p.m., you could do it whatever time you want. I'll make it do it in the morning. Why not? Okay. So this is weekly, right? Okay, so what I do is I pick, okay, it could be anytime I want to. I'm going to have it do it on Sundays and at 8 a.m. when nobody's working. The system is automatically going to run this on a timer job and execute this action for us every single week for us. Okay. I do need a condition. This might seem kind of arbitrary, but I need a context to run this from. So I have to put some kind of condition for a timer thing. So I'm going to put 1, and it's just using the context of a list record that already exists. And what do I want to do? We're creating, I chose right. It's going to reset stuff. I hate this. But I should have done, okay, so it's create list item. Let's retype that. Create timesheet Sunday for Will Cooper. So I'd probably do this for each employee, right? All right, those settings are still right. My condition's still there. Okay, cool. So now I'm gonna have the right action settings. That's good. I don't have to do anything special with advanced. So I can just leave defaults there. That's fine. Okay, so then it's gonna ask me, okay, you're gonna create a record. So current site, current list, right? Because I came from the context of timesheet. So we're good to just leave those. That's default values. Okay, so consultant is Will Cooper. All right, we need start and end time, right? That was one of the questions in the chat. So I'm going to set the start to, how do you do this? You have a today function, exactly what we need. So the action is going to run on Sunday. I said that it's a week start of Sunday on these, so all I have to do is put that. Really simple, right? And then the end is on a Saturday. So what do? I know what to do. I'm kind of quizzing you guys. Okay, do today plus 7. No, that would make it the next Sunday. That would be wrong. It's Saturday, right? So it's today plus 6. Okay, so this is going to auto-generate that timesheet for me. This is all I have to do. I've completely done everything I need to for this action. So when I come into the system each week, that's going to be auto-generated for me. Okay, I'll prove it to you. I have another system that runs like this. When I come in here on Monday morning, I've already got timesheets in. I already have my timesheet, so I just need to edit it and put in my thing. So we're taking work off of our users. And also that's good because if somebody doesn't turn in a timesheet, we need to track things like that. None of that would work unless we automatically have timesheets. All right, well, while we're doing actions, there's other things we want to automate. So another thing I want to do is auto submit. Okay, so the user does have an action to submit. Well, maybe we should do that first. So let's do a listener where if they check the submitted checkbox, then it's going to change status for us. Okay, so this will be update list item, and we're going to do change status to was it complete or submitted? These are things you got to check. You got to be sure about it. So my status can be. Now our system's going to drive this, right? So I don't want the user to change that. So that's something we're going to watch out for. Okay, so we're going to change status to submitted if they use this checkbox. Okay, so we're going to say change status to submitted if checkbox. Okay, so this one just runs on the edit form. That's what we need to listen. And our condition is what? It's when that checkbox changes, right? It's that submit checkbox. We will use this after change equals yes. If that happens on the edit form, then we need to change the status. Okay, so we'll change status to submitted. The default item, that's correct. It means just the current item is affected. So that's it. I love how fast you can set up these actions. Hit close. Because it just made me realize something. I want to change something on column permissions. I don't want users to change that field. So I'll add a rule for that. So I go to status, and we're going to make it read only all the time. Yep. Okay, there we go. Save that. Okay. What do I want to do? I want to check it, right? Always check your changes as much as you can. There, see how that's read only? That's good. That's how we need it to be. Okay, let's come back to actions. Okay, if I'm going to use a action in the form like that, I need to reset the checkbox because I'm not storing that value. All it is for me, it's just a trigger. Now it is true I can use manual actions with Infowise, and those are great. But I like this option because it's right in the form, so nobody's going to miss this. You know, with the manual action, they might not know to go to that menu or something like this. If you're doing something like this, you got to reset the checkbox. So that's really easy to do, but you don't ever want the checkbox to stay checked. Otherwise, we get like a false trigger. We don't want to repeatedly submit the form, right? Okay, so I'm going to say reset form checkbox. Okay, again, this is on edit. No conditions here because I just wanted to do this for me every time. So I'm just going to say submit. No, set it back to no every time. Now it's a chain of actions I'm building, right? So the sequence matters a lot. So I'm going to save that. Now with this particular one, I like to remind myself, I always want that to go last, so I'll do something like this. To remind me so I don't put anything behind it. Because I want that at the end of the list. Okay. So another thing I wanted to do is, now I do want users to submit their timesheet, but because people are lazy, they don't fill out their time, I want to kind of light a fire under them. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to auto submit their timesheet for them if they don't turn it in. So they're going to be in some hot water. If they didn't get their time entries done, and none of us like to do time entries, it's basically going to submit without their hours in, and they're going to get in trouble and all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what I want, because otherwise you're going to have lazy users. They'll kind of ignore your system, not get it in on time, stuff like that. So auto submit, right? So this is going to be sort of like the user submit, except this is based on time, right? So, okay, auto submit if not submitted by Fridays. They're due on Fridays. Friday at, say, what, 6 p.m.? Does that sound good? Okay, this is a timer-based action, and therefore I don't want to check these other ones, otherwise it's going to go off when I don't want it to. I'm going to have a lot of problems. This is just timer based. Okay, so this is weekly, like that other action we made, and this one's on Friday at 6 p.m. Okay, and then what I want to do for timer based, I have to have a condition. Okay, so we're going to say kind of think this one through. We'll say ID always not equals 0. I'll check all the items. Well, ID, I could do that here, because basically what I wanted to do is sweep through the list and get everything. So this is a little different. I wanted to check all the list items. I get a little hung up on this. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't do it this way. I'm going to start, crawl before you walk, right? I'm going to start with something really basic. I'm going to make it just check for me for now. I think I can make it sweep through the items, but I'm going to start easy, and then I can adjust it. Say consultant. Okay, so which items? The ones where this item, and we'll say we're checking for what? Where it wasn't submitted, right? So status always not equals submitted. And if it's not submitted, the system's going to submit it. So status is going to change. Okay, so there's another timer-based one. Remember, sequence of actions matters, right? So I got to put my reset form box or action below that. We're going to need email alerts, right? You're going to need to have email alerts for that. So probably what you want is reminders to go out to tell people to turn in their timesheets before that. So you're going to have kind of a chain of things that are going to work together. Maybe that's what we can work on next. Printing, that's going to be an important one. Maybe we can do that before we get into to emails. Security, that's another one we could work on. You may want to make that private information. I can talk about that for a second. I don't know if I want to go through all that configuration just because we don't have lots of time left, but let's talk about how you would do it. If you need to make sure that users only see their own timesheets and other people aren't being nosy and getting into it, one way you could do that is make the list publicly available. But once the timesheet gets generated, you could have a chain of actions in here. And there's a lot of things that are oriented around managing permissions. Okay? So this follows the same concept as SharePoint security if you were doing it manually. Okay, so what would you have to do if you were changing item level permissions? That's what we're talking about. It's an individual record. In SharePoint, before you can do anything with permissions, you have to stop inheritance, right? Basically, you need to unlock the ability to change that. So that would be your first action. So in this case, you would do it for the specific item. And then after that action, you can create your additional actions to change the security of that individual item and do it dynamically. Make it apply to, in this case, that specific consultant. Takes a little time to set that up, but that is something you could automate as part of the system to help control who is allowed to see that timesheet data, and not have to worry about sensitive information being shared with everybody. Okay. All right. So let's get into print templates. So in my case, I mentioned if this is a consulting situation, probably might like to do things like generate reports for the customers, because you'd like to filter and show like a PDF printout of all the work that was done for them for that month. So the PDF capabilities in Infowise are awesome. You can do a lot here. So we're going to make a template for our timesheets. And actually, the way we want to do that is according to time entries, because that's what holds the individual data. So let me go back. I want to change the context of where I am. I want to go back to time entries, and that's how we want to generate a report. That's really easy to set up. Okay, so now I'm coming from the time entries context, and I'm going to go to print again. Okay, so we'll say, call this customer timesheet. This is just a name that shows up in the Infowise settings if I want to configure it. Okay, so I've got different types, right? Definitely not doing calendar. I've got item or list. Item would be like one time entry. That's definitely not what we're doing. We're trying to have a summary report of a set of time entries according to a certain criteria. Now, the look of this report by default would be kind of like the view on our dashboard. All we want to do is basically pick some columns to show in the report. So let me see. I think I made a note about that. It's going to be pretty simple. Really, we just want to know the name of the consultant, right? And then date. Maybe date's supposed to be first. Don't have to think real carefully about this because we're going to see what it looks like, and it becomes more obvious once the report comes out. Date, consultant, description, hours, right? That's all we need. So these are going to be line items. It's going to show row by row on this PDF that it's going to spit out. Okay, and then we want to do some more stuff. We want to put in like a nice header. I can say, okay, customer. Does this look familiar? You see this in a few different areas. There's three that I can think of. So in the Fragments area has a visual editor tool like this in this area, and then in the email alert templates it has a similar kind of setup. So you can go into a code view. So again, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with HTML and CSS, but if you want to get really granular and have more precise control over things, you can always enter that. You don't have to, but it helps you to be kind of a little more versatile in some of the things that you set up. All right, so background color, I'll just make it green. Need to make it bigger, right? That, make it underline, I guess. Okay, this is just setting up like a standard header. So I don't think this looks beautiful. We're trying to kind of move quickly right now. Notice you can put dynamic information in the footer. I could put, report generated at, and then I can do the double square bracket thing. And then you may have static information too, if you have questions, please contact. Okay, just whatever. You see the general concept. So this would just be showing up at the bottom of the report. Okay, you've got other things you can do down here. You can do things if you want with theming and CSS and all that. We don't really need that for the sake of what we're doing. In terms of general process, really in all these things, you want to kind of start with simple concepts and establish core functionality before you get more sophisticated with those settings. You want to make sure all the main things work right, and then you can kind of layer in more sophistication. So when you're first building the systems, don't let yourself get bogged down in getting everything precisely the way that you want. It's unnecessary. Okay, so this would let me print, from the print menu. Like I could go to a different view, check off items, and I can get a PDF report already just from what I did. What I can also do, just like we had an automated timer process, I can let the Infowise actions do that for me. I could have it send that timesheet report weekly to a library. I could set up folders for different customers. I could even auto generate one and send it out to the customer directly. That scares me a little bit just because I want a little more control than that. There could be something in there I don't want. The consultant might have put something wrong. So that would make me a little bit nervous. So to get this kind of report, if I go in here, let's see if we can see something cool. All right, print. Come on. Oh, it doesn't like me for some reason. I think I've set something up wrong. All right, let's see. Let me show you another one just to kind of show you what the output would look like, because I don't want you to think I'm a liar. Okay. I'll go, these are ones that I generate for customers monthly. Here, I'll go to that one. Okay, so these are PDFs. That's the print output, and it just generates something like this. Right? Pretty slick. This is something you can email out to your customer. You don't have to manually generate it. You can just use the automation in Infowise to basically incrementally kind of like move over your automated processes into the system. Okay, let's talk about email alerts, because that undoubtedly would be an important part of this system. So when you do an email alerts, you kind of want to think about the situations that you care about. So with timesheets, nobody that I have ever met likes to enter their time entries and all that kind of stuff. It's a chore. It's kind of annoying, and it's all too common that people turn them in late or not at all. So we have to kind of have a system that's proactive and going to stay after them to handle things like that. So gotta set up some templates related to that. So let's do a reminder first. Let's look at that. So I'm going to the timesheets list, and now there's two ways you can get to the alert settings. You can just jump to it right from the button here in the ribbon toolbar, or you can get to it from the design screen. Either one goes right to the same screen, so either one's fine. Okay, so let me show you kind of the type of thing that we're looking to do. For mail templates, that's where you want to start out. So if you're ever doing email alerts, always start with the content of your message first, and then I went to this from the timesheet screen. I want to go from the time entries. Sorry. Make sure you do the content template for email first, though. Okay, time entries. So that's important. The context of the list for going to email alerts, it matters just the same as it does for the design screen. This matters because when I go to do the template, I want it to have the fields that I want, right? Otherwise, it's going to show me. Oh man, I'm getting so confused right now. I'm sorry. I do want to be from timesheets. That's what the email reminders have to do with the timesheet. Got myself all spun around, overthinking it, I guess. Okay, I have this right. I promise. Okay. All right, let's take a look. I've already kind of have some templates around this. I want you to, kind of get some ideas from what this is. Okay, so what kind of things do we want? Well, timesheet submitted. Would like to dump that out. So the manager might like to know when a consultant submits their timesheet. Okay, so that's one type of one we can do. What's this one? Oh, this is one for the customer. So I could create an email template and have it auto-generated and go out to the customer. So that's what that one is. So if I'm just trying to save myself work, here's an important one. Okay, so what do you have to watch out for? Maybe somebody wants to come into their timesheet and change the hours after that week went past. It's like 2 weeks later, and I want to do something bad, like pad my hours or put something in. We could set a condition to detect that. So if the timesheets already has status submitted, um, now there could be a legitimate reason for that. So rather than just lock the whole system down where nobody can touch anything, instead it's better to make it really verbose. So the system will talk to you if something's going on. So basically, this lets us keep an eye on something. So if I'm a manager, I would get a alert telling me, all right, somebody's changing information in an old timesheet, and I could say, oh, okay, I see what they did, or whoa, wait a second, I need to talk to Joe. He's doing something he shouldn't be doing. So that's what that one's for. Same thing with this, late time, modify. So if they add or modify time entry after the timesheet was submitted, not good. All right, so let's create one, right? I was just showing you kind of some different templates. So when I'm creating email alerts, I really try to be very consistent about this. So first of all, for the name of it, I want to name it according to whatever the name of my list is, just to keep track of these. So this is going to be a reminder. So I'm going to say timesheets reminder. And then for the subject line, it's good to follow a consistent convention there. So this is for the timesheet system. I want all my email alerts to have the same prefix. And then users can set email alert rules for that. So consistency is very useful in that. So then I'm going to say your timesheet is due. Please submit. Just like the other things that can just start with a basic concept, and I can get more sophisticated with it in terms of inserting information. So pretty much with any email alert, I do want to include a link to the record, right? If they're in their email, I'd like them to just click a link and take them directly to the timesheet. So that added item link is what I want. So I'm going to add that pretty much right away in the body because I know I want that. So let's see, let's put this information in there. And then what else do we want to put? We could put in some information from the list. What do we have? We have the start, put in the start and end date. So I'm going to add that. And it's a little fuzzy. I don't know necessarily everything I want to put in this content template yet, but I just kind of want to get it rolling at the moment. So I can kind of keep things simple. I'm more interested in the functionality, right? I want to make sure the email alert is going to go out, and then I can circle back and I can polish up this template a little bit. So we'll make the size a little bigger, maybe highlight that to make it stand out for me. So I'm going to change the color, background color. Let's make it, what, pink? Okay. And then that's it. We'll just keep it really simple for now. So I start with the content template. I'll check this so other people can access it. I don't have any attachments on this one. So that's it. That's all I need the reminder to do for me. So there's a content template. Okay, so that now becomes available, and I can create an email alert role. So how am I gonna have that go through the timesheets for me? So I'm in the timesheets list, and it's already giving me the form to create alert. So I'm gonna make my name for my email alert match what I called the content template. So it's just timesheets reminder. I'm just keeping everything really simple and easy to understand. Okay, this is going to happen on a timer, right? So I need to make sure that it's according to date down below. For the time being, and this is probably how I should start, I'll just make it go to myself, okay? Because I'm just checking it at first. I want to make sure it does what I think it's going to do before I, assign this alert to everybody. If you want to, we can go ahead and add it. It's going to use the field, right? So it's the consultant. There's the person that they're going to get reminded. So you add that in there. I guess we can do that for now. And what we're looking for is a particular date time. So let's see what options we have. I think I did this according to creative because I know one created is, let me check a rule that I have set up on my other list real quick because, oh, I think I turned off the reminders from our other thing. A little stumped on this. Well, one thing I could do is based on column created, I could say, 5 days after that, 5 days after that date, go ahead and send the reminder. So it'll trigger at a specific time. It's using the value in the created, which we can predict that. We know when that's going to be, right? Because we already have an automated action to create that. And we need a condition in there because we don't want to remind somebody to submit if they already did it, right? So what we're doing is checking through the list where status is always not equal submitted, right? Or I could say equals in progress. Either one would work. That's fine. So this is a time process. It's going to run when this condition is met at that specific time. And then since it's timer based, the mail template, I got to select this fourth condition. If I did default, then it wouldn't use the template I made. I need the timesheet reminder. So I just picked that in the drop down. Okay, operational, good. Okay, and that's it. I can just click add. Now, even if this isn't exactly right, that's okay. We're just getting a template and an alert set up. And timer-based ones are a little tricky to check, right? Because I can check the manually trigger ones really easily, right? But I have to kind of wait and see. I can do things like play with the date and time to make it soon, but all the same, you kind of have to wait for, I think of it, I call it the SharePoint timer bus. You kind of have to wait for the bus to come by. So those are takes a little more time to troubleshoot that just to confirm it actually goes out when you think it's going to go out. We can do one announcing that the timesheet was submitted. That would make sense, right? All right, so I added that one. Okay, see the site? Got that up there. That's kind of an easy, you can sort through these columns and find things that way. So I'm going to do one for timesheet submitted. Okay, this one's going to be a little different. Basically, this might go to a manager. I'll just make it go to me, I guess. All right, for now. It's on a modify, and we'd like an email notification to go out to the manager just to let them know when that employee turned in their timesheet. So in this case, what we're looking for is the submit after change equals yes. So that can be a trigger point both to change the status and trigger this email alert, right? Now, you might remember I reset submit in the actions, but this will trigger before that resets. It will work. And then I can use a reminder, or excuse me, I can use the submitted template. I forgot, I told you guys to do this first, and I broke my own rule. So if you want to create a new one, one thing you can do is kind of copy and paste your template and use that to start your new one. So this is going to be timesheets, timesheet submitted. So I'll do new template. Say submitted. And then remember, I use the tag in the beginning of my timesheets. A timesheet has been submitted. Okay. And by pasting in this kind of helps me to follow a similar pattern. Okay, so I'm going to say the consultant who submitted their timesheet, right? So I want to do consultant. Oh, I did it to subject line. I didn't mean to do that. I'll probably need that up there too. Notice the pattern of this, the square brackets. It's nice to kind of note these because if you can see what the pattern is, you can even sometimes type this in and that will work. So this is probably going to look kind of ugly the first time I do it, but I don't really care about that at the moment. I just want to make sure that it functionally works. And then it's going to be very easy for me to kind of circle back behind and polish this to make it look nicer. That's kind of the easy part. The reason I'm not caring about that essentially at the moment is because I'm trying to kind of get my core system built, right? You're going to care a lot more about functionality and that those requirements are met first. The look and feel things, you know, you're not going to run into any technical blockers on that front. It's good to kind of put those in the parking lot till later, in my opinion. You know, we just need kind of the main idea here in terms of functionality, and then we can make it look pretty later. All right. So there's the template, timesheet submitted, which will let me go to here. Now this one's on modify, right? It's when the user checks the box. So there it is. Last one on the list. It'll use that template, and I just click add, and it'll give me a little confirmation dialog. Now this one I can check, right? Because this should happen immediately. So we can see if our email or it's going to go out the way that I want it to. Okay, so all right, let's come back to our form. We haven't been in our form for a while. We're starting to run tight on time, so I'm going to try to wrap up. I know this has been a long session, but I really appreciate you guys' attendance and participation in this. And I'll just mention, by the way, we are going to do other types of systems later, and I will send out a recording and all that. So hopefully it's giving you kind of some ideas on things you can do. Okay, so let's see if submitted functionality does what we want it to do. Okay, so it's in progress right now. What should happen is when I check this box, remember we created an action which will change the status for us. That should fire in the background, and also we should see an email notification come out. All right, so first of all, now it takes a second for this to go. I got to refresh my screen. Come on. I may have done something bad. No, there it goes. Okay, cool. Okay, so they're submitted. All right, so I gotta stop sharing my screen for a second because I don't want you guys to see my email. All right, hold on. Oh, good. Okay, cool. I got what I was supposed to go get. I'm gonna show it to you. All right. There, see? Got a happy email. Boom. Well, so-and-so submitted their timesheet from that date. Okay. Not a really good looking email at the moment, but I don't care about that at the moment because it works. I care about the functionality. That's kind of your initial focus, and email content templates are easy to update. So probably what I'd like to have more in there is some dynamic information put polish. And absolutely, that is important. I'm definitely not trying to imply that's not important. It's just I'm setting aside the area where I know I'm not going to get blocked or have a technical headache because that's kind of the easy stuff. That's downhill when I start getting updating those. Okay, so that's most of what I wanted to cover. There's a lot of different things you want to do in the system. So what you typically want to do after you build this and start getting into dashboards and different views and things like that. So I can give you some examples just to give you an idea of things you might like to have in a timesheet system. You could do things like build some charting. Infowise has charting. This is indicators. I can use web parts and things like that to help me see how that works. In my case, I have different, customers and things like that that I like to run reports for and things like that. In this situation, invoicing, probably you might like to have an invoicing list and things tied to that as well. Um, all kinds of different actions you can do. Let me kind of show you um, some other kinds of actions that we didn't get into yet just in this presentation. So if I go into design, kind of giving you a peek or giving you some food for thought in terms of how a more fully built out system would turn into as opposed to the one that we threw together quickly inside of 2 hours. So you see some of the security rules, where you break inheritance and can change things. For timesheet reports for the month for a customer, I'll kind of show you what that might look like. So to do that, I have to have kind of a filter where I'm looking for a particular date range and then where the customer equals a certain value. So if you remember, we use the list print template. So this is an Infowise print action, right? See that, print list items? I can, instead of, you probably, most of you are used to maybe using the print templates to manually generate a report by clicking in the user interface. What's kind of a more advanced concept and hopefully something that you can get into, you can actually have that generated and filter out and show just certain particular records. So in this case, what I'm looking for is to get a date range and filter out and show just for a specific customer. And that's what lets me get a print report like the one you saw earlier, which was just for a specific customer. In that functionality, you have the ability to pick from a template, control your output. In my case, what I do is I have it auto-generate to a document library that I've created, and then I can dynamically change the name, put a date on it, things like that. So when thinking about a timesheet system, even if it's not, in my case, which is sort of like a consultant model, even if it's for employees, I would say reporting is really important because you've got other systems, and especially if you're coming from a timesheet system where people are used to using something where there are printed reports that are held by HR or something like that, that backup information is going to be really valuable. I think we've kind of covered enough for now. Let me just check questions if I can, because you guys did really have a lot of good questions earlier, and I'll see if I can comment on some of that. I really appreciate you guys' participation because I know there's a lot of things that we could kind of delve into. Wow, you guys have good questions. Okay. Sorry, I'm just kind of absorbing this. Check-in action. Sounds like you're talking about using like the check-in, check-out option like you might in SharePoint pages. You really could mimic that type of functionality by controlling column permissions, James, through your action. So, if you remember in column permissions, you can kind of change fields to be write or read only based on certain conditions. So, rather than maybe trying to use native functionality where you don't have the control to change how that works, you could really create your own kind of concept for that. So, just a thought. I do that quite a bit. So, for example, on complete, if our status or submitted, we could set our forms so all those fields go to read only if the status changes. So that'd be a way you could kind of use that concept. Default in the time entry between the start and end dates. Well, the default I used in the time entry is just whatever the current day the user was using. D, you probably could do you could create an Infowise validation rule to check for that. I don't think that'd be too hard because you have the reference of the start and end date on those. So, basically just go into the Infowise validation rules, and you could put a rule in there and it'll block and give a validation message. But hopefully the fact that you're giving them like the current date by default, they probably won't bump into that, but you could block that way. Oh, there's a question about the new and edit selection for fragments. I think you're correct, Sean. That's oh, okay. Actually, my colleague said that it is in latest. So you just need to update your Infowise component, and you'll be able to do that, Sean. So make sure you get on your SharePoint admin if they're not keeping your components up to date. So the end date from the parent to the child. Okay, I see a lot of questions from customers about that. There's more than one way to pass data, but it can be tricky. The dynamic fields and defaults, that's one way to do that. But it's a little bit tricky. One thing I'll suggest to you that you can try, which you may not be aware of, Infowise has a lookup function. So if you use cache lookup, you can create an action and say, let's say, for example, I wanted to get the ID of a parent record. I can create an action and I can make a field in a child list called parent ID, and then use an action and say cache lookup, and then ID, and set that, and it will look up the value from parent list. So that's something to check into. Not the only way you would have to do it, but that could help you. Is it possible to make fragments conditional based on what fields are filled out? They don't work quite like that. Sean asked about that. He left. But what you might do if you want that kind of situation, you could actually make a SharePoint field and make it read-only and actually use it to store information. So what I would do to get that type of functionality is do a SharePoint multi-line rich text and then populate it with my message. And then I can use advanced column permissions to make it hide or show. So that's kind of a little bit of a trick where you could get that kind of functionality similar to fragments, but allow it to use column permissions. Just use the field for informational purposes. How can we set a report to print this week's timesheet or last week's? Okay, so what you have to do is create timer-based actions. That's some of the things that I was showing on there. So you have to set a condition which controls, which items in the record. It's a little tricky. Got to do a little bit of practice on that front, but I did kind of show you some concepts on that. The edit option on the list per user. Yeah, I mentioned item level permissions. So in terms of controlling things, I think you said on the list, I think you mean on the individual records that came from David. But if you're controlling, you can automate that on timesheets by doing the Infowise manage permissions actions. And you can break inheritance and then add or remove users item level in an automated way. Again, that's a little bit tricky. It was a little deeper than I can get into in our session today, but definitely possible and applicable to this kind of solution. Are there options for exporting all settings for a list to a different environment? We do have a tool for doing that. Generally, as a developer, having done this stuff a lot, I tend to shy away from that because it's a bit tricky. My preference, if you think about it this way, we were able to accomplish quite a lot just in 2 hours. I tend to follow a safer path. And what I mean is I really prefer to, may sound bad, but recreate a lot of these settings, if only just so I have more explicit control. So it is possible to do what you're wanting, but in terms of templating, I tend to try to steer away from that. Usually I feel like I can design a solution that'll meet the business objectives without, following the cookie cutter process, so to speak. So hopefully that's not a situation you get into a lot. One issue you have with that is if you're using that kind of cookie cutter pattern, and then you later need to change settings or change the functionality, you're going to have a problem because you're going to you're going to have recreated work. You have to kind of manually configure. It's not going to be a good way to automatically push that out across all those instances. Timer alert be recurring. Yeah, David, that was one of the options in there. If you look in there, there's a repeat option for email alerts. So you can check that out. And I think you can repeat up to 100 times. With condition, of course, it will turn off depending on your condition, like if you're checking for status submitted. All right. I think that's about everything we're going to cover for today. I know it was a really long session. I really appreciate the participation. We really excellent questions today. It's nice to kind of get participation from the customers. Like I say, I'm going to have a recording of the session so you can review that later if you want. We're going to do it again. We're open to feedback. Send us an email if you have ideas on a general type of a system. But we are going to do more sessions like this since we think this is beneficial for our users. And that's about it. So really appreciate everybody taking a chunk out of their day to join us and get involved in the process. I really hope you're loving the Infowise tools as much as I am. I keep discovering new things that I can do with it. And our developers do a really fantastic job of adding new features. So thanks for being really great customers for us. We're going to continue to do what we can to support you guys, and really appreciate you coming out. So hopefully we'll see you in the next session, and have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend. Thank you very much.